Alright, so I have another multi-part video request for you. So the first question was from Shuvo Bizwaz, 4697. Can you make a video about best character for GBR? Then I had a sub-question on that from Ladyboy1988, and it was, I was literally about to ask the same thing, lol, but best team for GBR instead of just character. So this video is going to be loaded and packed with information, so check out for timestamps down below. To simply answer the question, honestly, it's just tier 4 characters. Tier 4 characters are the best. With that being said, let's go ahead and dig into some of them with some team buildups that I would recommend. And also keep in mind that when it comes to GBR, especially Dormammu, it is okay to have people carry you. So typically, individuals like myself who spend a lot of money on their accounts can clear Dormammu solo in under a minute, or 2 minutes, 3 minutes, depending on which characters are using. So getting a carry is probably your best bet. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the teams, and I'm going to talk about how to beat each of the GBRs, one after the other, starting with Dormammu, working our way backwards to Master Mold. So if you want to check out the timestamps down below, you can jump ahead, and I just figured put it all in one video instead of breaking it up and having you jump around through different videos. The characters I find have a tendency to have an edge. Idealistically, like I said, you want to tier 4 them. I think Doctor Strange, Jean Grey, Ghost Rider, Beta Ray, Bill, Magneto, and Human Torch all excel when it comes to using them against Dormammu, or any of the GBR for that matter. If they can take on Dormammu, they can take on the other ones as well. Different types of team comps, it's going to depend on the character, of course. And you also want to keep in mind that you want to build multiple teams. So let me show you my teams, and I'll talk about why I made the choices that I made. To begin with, as you can see here, I'm using Doctor Strange. I'm using Doctor Strange with the self-leadership. I'm also using Wong as a support. Wong has a great support ability that does work for Doctor Strange down here on his passive. So it's wrong passive, I clicked. Magic Allies increases basic damage dealt to supervillains and superheroes by 53%. It's a nice solid one, and it allows other supports to be opened up for other characters. I'm not recommending that you build Wong specifically for Doctor Strange. I'm just letting you know that if you have Wong with the uniform, you can leave some of the other supports open. I, of course, have Coulson here with the seasonal uniform, which is very hard to get the Winter Ops because it's a seasonal uniform. That makes him solid for both heroes and villains, so I basically got a lead and double support. In most cases, self-lead with a double support is going to be your best bet, or if you are going to have a leader who has a support option as well, that's also fine. The other team I have here is Odin's leadership with Valkyrie support. Valkyrie is probably one of the best supports in the game, and Thor as the main damage dealer. Thor with his newest uniform is actually better than Odin with his previous uniform. However, I wouldn't recommend him as one of the top characters, which is why I didn't list him. And then Doctor Strange up here, it is worth mentioning, I can clear under a minute on Blast Day, which is one of the other things that we want to talk about, is the day of the GBR when we talk about clearing them. Here's another team-up option, of course. Misty Knight down the road would be a good option too for using for leadership, but I have Shuri for the leadership support. I have Luna Snow, and then I have White Fox, who is one of the best supports in the game, specifically for characters with the leadership ability, which Luna does have. So with this team comp, we have both leadership, support, and support. So again, double support with the leadership, basically. Jean Grey. Jean Grey has the leadership here from Satana. Satana also has a passive support ability with this uniform that allows her to basically increase elemental damage to characters. Cyclops is just there as a support. Not even a fantastic support, just a filler, basically, in this case. And then, of course, Jean. Jean is fantastic in all the game modes you use her for. I have her built with a PvE build, so in this case, it makes her a really good option for clearing. Magneto is one of the top clear options up there with Doctor Strange. He can clear in under 2 minutes, maybe even just over a minute for my Magneto. He has self-leadership, Dazzler support, and then Mystique for support. Gladiator. Gladiator is a nice solid clear, nice and strong. He has self-leadership. He has support both from Beta Ray Bill as well as from Yondu. Yondu with his newest uniform, which is a seasonal summer uniform, but it is a phenomenal uniform for support. So again, leadership with double support. You see the theme going on here. Beta Ray Bill is able to do this in his own right, but I like to use Gladiator, so I use Gladiator instead. I do have Psylocke here. We do have a support from Storm, and we also have the leadership support from Polaris, but this really is not a really great team. But again, I can clear it in under 4 minutes, so I have it here anyway. Ghost Rider is a phenomenal clear, especially when you get him up to tier 4. Now remember, he does scale with fire resist, so I'm actually using the leadership, which allows for ignoring target's dodge rate. But I have Robbie Reyes' artifact, which adds to the fire resist, and then of course Flame Allies increased fire resist by 60%. So I could use Ghost Panther's leadership instead, but I have a tendency to like to use the ignore dodge for most other teams, so I just left it there. Ghost Panther, of course, has a nice solid support, so again, double support going on here. Not really too much for leadership going on, not with that ignore dodge, so it's just a double support with Ghost Rider, but Ghost Rider does a fantastic job. Scarlet Witch doesn't do too terrible. I'm using Vision for his leadership because of the extra 50%, so 70% all basic attacks for Scarlet Witch. Nothing too super special there. Ancient One has a support ability that increases elemental damage. Let's see, I think it is this one. So increases damage to elemental damage by 40% for all allies just by being on the team. So again, leadership and a support. Now, she does have self-lead, so she would be a great option for a double support. And then I have Moon Knight here as well. There's, of course, the Weapon Master leadership that comes from using Blade. And then we have the Weapon Master support ability as well as the passive uniform support ability that kind of double taps here onto Moon Knight as well. This is just to give you a basic idea. What I'm trying to do by going through all of the teams is just giving you some example teams that are able to clear. I have a very well-built account. You might be struggling with your account. So if you're doing other teams among the one I suggested, I mentioned Doctor Strange. He has the self-lead. He can be double supported. Jean, of course, can be double supported. She does not have a self-lead. Ghost Rider we just talked about. Beta Ray Bill has a self-lead and can be double supported. Magneto has a self-lead and can be double supported. And Human Torch, probably the best team is Mr. Fantastic's leadership with the Thing as a support. But you have different options you can do with that team as well. Most of the ones that are going to be best are going to have self-leadership. The other thing to pay attention to is what day the GBR is. If you haven't been paying attention to this before, keep an eye out for it. Every day GBR will change. So in this case, it shows Dormammu, Galactus, and Master Mold with this little green icon. That means it's the agility or speed, right? That's the speed characters. So if I'm creating a lobby, typically what's going to end up doing is it's going to show you who has the best opportunity. So this is showing the Fist for Combat, because combat is really good against speed types. Combat defeats speed, speed defeats blast, blast defeats combat. Universals kind of work against everyone. So if you have a type advantage on any of the GBRs, it's actually going to help you clear a little bit quicker as well. Those types of things you want to keep in mind and just be aware of the type and the type that you're using against. So when you're picking your teams, you can pre-set up your teams and make it faster to load them if you wanted to. But you can also just kind of filter in here as well, where you can search. So I'm looking for combat characters. Who's your main combat dealer? And then you can build a team around that character. For this next portion of the video, I'm going to break down each of the different GBRs, what sort of attacks to keep an eye out for, and kind of how to clear them the best that I know how. In the spirit of doing a mild flex, I'm also going to show you really quick my Doctor Strange doing a speed clear. So this is an example of a team doing a carry with a well-built account. Remember, if your characters aren't really well built and your account is not really powerful with cards and swords and whatnot, you're not going to be able to do clears like this. This is why it's sometimes better just to have someone else carry you. Next, I'm going to show a couple clips over here to just kind of show you different attacks to look out for. We'll talk about the different phases that each of the GBRs go through. As mentioned, we're going to start out with Dormammu, and then we'll go through the rest with timestamps below if you want to jump ahead. So this is, of course, with my Jean team. Doesn't really matter to team. It's not about the team. It's about the different attacks that are being used and what to watch out for. So the first attack that Dormammu will do is you'll see him do this lean back, and then these little waves of flame pop out. You can stand between the waves. Most cases, unless your character is extremely squishy and you shouldn't be in Dormammu at all, or GBR for that matter, you shouldn't die from these instantly. But if you don't have a healing character, you're struggling, and you do want to stay alive, watch out for these rings. Just kind of avoid where the red rings are and stand in between the rings. Pretty straightforward. He will do his flames also in a reverse direction. If he's not pushing them out, he's pulling them in, but they apply in the same way. You just stand between the bars to survive these. The next thing that he does is he's going to end up doing a little fist move from either side, which causes flames to erupt up out of the ground. Again, he's kind of advertising. If you see that red bar there, just avoid the red bar. Don't stand on top of it. When the flames are burning, don't stand in the flames. Pretty straightforward. He's then going to kind of shift back and cross his arms and breathe flames out of his mouth, and then he's going to kind of fan across. There's two ways to survive this. The easiest way is pay attention to the arrows on the ground. That's telling you what direction he's going to breathe in. So if you run to the front half of those arrows, you can just hide and wait until he starts breathing his flame, and you can attack him from the side. Just don't use any attacks that are going to pull you out in front of it. The other way to survive this is to swap characters as the flame is coming by. Dormammu has 4 main phases. His first phase is basically from full hit point bars to about 40 hit point bars. Then once you defeat him, he's going to come back for phase 3, and then about 20 hit point bars left, he's going to get into his final phase. If you can do enough damage, you can skip through phases and go through quicker. Just remember, after you defeat him the first time, he is going to come back a second time as well. Dormammu's phase 2 starts around 40 hit point bars left. What's going to end up happening is there'll be a little strip of color with purple above and below it. As long as you're not standing in the purple when he begins this phase of attack, you should be all right. He's going to become untargetable to a degree. You can do some damage, but it's very minor. Most people will try to look for that strip and stand in it. If you stand in the purple, you're going to take constant fire damage, and it can kill your character. While these flames are burning, he's going to throw out 4 blasts of Souls of the Faltine. The first grouping is going to be 5, followed by 4, followed by 5, followed by 4. So usually you can dodge back and forth in between the grouping of 5 and the grouping of 4, and it's going to be the same pattern, the 5, 4, 5, 4. Once he fires out the 4th set, which is 4 Souls of the Faltine, they're like these burning fireballs, he's then going to be able to be attacked again, and he's going to be in the second phase officially. He's basically going to do all the same attacks that he did in phase 1. He's just going to attack a little bit faster, and they're going to be a little bit closer together. Once you get down all those hit points, he's going to disappear and fade back, and then he's going to walk back with his hit points regenerated, which then is going to start phase 3. He also does a little slash across the sky, which kind of does a little rip across the screen. This is just indicating that you sort of pseudo-defeated him once, and now he's using a second life. Characters like Jean Grey and stuff, when they're defeated, they come back. This is a very similar type of mechanic to that. In phase 3, now when he does the little fist thing, you'll get a burst of flame, but then 2 bursts of flames will also pop up. He'll also start overlapping some of these attacks. So sometimes he'll do this little fist attack, then he'll do his breath attack, and he'll sort of start combining these together. One of the new tricks up his sleeve when it comes to phase 3 is he'll take his finger and point, and a little circular splash of red will appear and fire will erupt. This also causes a stun effect. It's same like the other ones. When you see the ground being targeted a certain color, just step out of it so you don't get the effects of the stun or the flame damage. The flame also ripples out and does rings as well. Just the center ring is really large, and then it gives you little ripples. So be aware of the ripples that come out after it. This phase will last until there is about 20 hit point bars left. At 20 hit point bars left or less, he's going to, again, shift back, and he is going to summon a huge flame wave that is going to come forward and pretty much one-shot your characters. There's 2 ways to survive this, like the other ones. The first way to survive this is to swap characters as the flame wave is coming towards you and you run at him. This is kind of risky, and if you have a main DPS, this can of course hurt you as you're waiting for that character to cool down to swap back to. The other way is Doctor Strange is going to summon 3 green circles that are going to be little time-free circles. By stepping into this time-free circle, you are frozen in time, and the flames will pass you by and not hurt you. Your character will be frozen and stuck momentarily until the flames are gone, and you'll be able to move again. These will be diagonally across the screen, starting in the upper left corner, in the center, and the bottom right. Technically, each player, since you can play with up to 3 players, and you should be for max rewards, can take their own circle, Keep in mind that it is possible to share a single spell time freeze circle with all 3 players. So if you pile up on the one circle, it will time freeze you all together. If you're outside of it, or if you were in the middle of an attack as it's coming over, the flame can still technically kill you. But as long as you're being covered by the ring, it can still save you by sharing it together. So veteran players that are trying to do a fast clear might bunch up and gather together to share one circle. Because as the flame's coming over, the upper left corner is the first one that'll be unfrozen, and then the middle, and then the bottom right. So some people like to be in that top left corner so they can start attacking right away. One other thing to keep an eye out for is every so often, he will send someone out to this island. This island is kind of broken off from the main platform that you're fighting him on, and he's going to send one of the mindless ones after you. Little short, quick clip from the comics, you actually have multiple armies of these mindless one creatures that were attacking the dark dimension that Dormammu is defending with a giant shield. So he's letting one through to fight with you. As long as you can defeat it, you can come back to the main island. The other way to escape the island is if you can get into Phase 4, where you get the time freeze shields. It'll automatically pull the characters back from the island. Characters only get sent to the island in Phase 3 and Phase 4, not in Phase 1 or Phase 2. As far as who ends up on the island, that's actually changed and shifted over time. Right now it has to do with whoever's doing the least amount of damage to Dormammu, or who's not attacking right away afterwards if the damage is close. So typically it doesn't matter. As soon as it comes to attacking again, just start wailing on them and then you won't get sent off to the island. If you are getting carried, it's usually a good idea to allow yourself to get thrown onto the island, not to die, to try to stay alive. This way you can allow your DPS to continue to do as much damage as possible to carry you. One of the new attacks that's going to start happening now is Dormammu will randomly throw out 5 Souls of the Faltine. These are indicated by little purple strips. As long as you don't stand on the purple strip, you won't get hit by one of the Souls of the Faltine. He also will every so often randomly spawn one around the map, which appears with a purple bar again. Just step off that purple bar and you should be fine. The center spray is always 5, and the one by itself will be in a random location targeting one of the characters. In Phase 4, he'll continue to do all of the other attacks that we've previously discussed. He'll continue to do them pretty rapidly. He just has a couple new attacks in there. So that's it. You follow those simple, easy steps, and you too can defeat Dormammu, or be carried by someone in Dormammu. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, or other tips you might want to share in the comments below. Next GBR that we're going to be talking about is Galactus. Now, if you're like me, you're farming Dormammu only. However, maybe you're a newer player and you're still wanting to farm Galactus, or Galactus is the highest one you're capable of doing. So I figured I might as well include that in this video as well, so you don't have to go hunt it down elsewhere. Galactus has 4 primary phases. One where he's standing in the middle, then he's going to shift off to the left of the screen, to the right of the screen, and then back to the center. Galactus's Phase 1 will last for about 65 hit point bars. These are some of the attacks to keep an eye out for. One of his attacks is pretty easy. It just shows a little red ripple where he's going to punch, slam, or hit the ground. This is a targeted one and usually targeted at one of the players. Aside from punching the ground, left or right half of the screen will turn red, and he'll do some sort of an arm attack, whether that be a straight punch, or a sweeping blow, or some sort of a hook, backhand type of a deal. But either way, it's going to attack everything within the red. Pretty easy, just stay out of the red. With both of these types of attacks, he can use either hand, and will typically lean back before he does the attack. So both look for a combination of him leaning back, and the red indication of either a circle, or one half of the screen. When he gets to Phase 2, he'll walk away and disappear into the shadows, and then reappear on the left-hand side of the screen. One of his attacks in Phase 2 is he'll cross his arms and lean back, then he'll spread them and lean forward. This will cause little purple circles to appear on the ground and burst up with a burst of energy attacking. Just step outside of the purple circles and you should be fine. These purple circles will follow your character around, so just kind of inch away. One thing that I don't like is when newer players are doing this phase, they'll have a tendency to run as quick as they can. And this will put little circles all over the place and you'll collide with your allies. If your allies are together and you just step far enough to get off the circle, This will keep the circles close together and it'll be easier to avoid. So one strategy that you can try to do is if each person stays away from each other and moves in small little areas, you can keep your attacks localized to your character and not spread them all around the screen. So if someone is running around like a mad person, just, do your best to avoid their circles and your circles on top of it. The next attack he's going to do is he's going to take both of his fists. He leans back again, slams them down. This causes a shockwave which will push your character back. And then you're going to have a big purple strip and you'll have 2 explosions of circular lights. There'll be a set pattern and they'll fill in the blank spaces on the second set. They'll do the burst up, and then what's going to end up happening is he leans back, then he leans forward, opens up both of his hands, shoots beams out of his eyes and his mouth and his hands all at the same time. Basically, what you're going to do is avoid the slam, then run at him, avoiding those circles that explode. When he's doing those blue beams and energy attack with his cosmic energy, if you're really close to him and past the point where that little purple line is on the screen, there's a little safe zone right next to him. If you're in that safe zone, you'll survive this. The next attack that he's going to end up doing in phase 2 is he kind of leans back to one side, then he puts his left hand forward. It's always his left hand, and there's going to be a little ring of cosmic energy, and asteroids will start appearing all along the screen and go from the top left to the bottom right. Just avoid these asteroids. Now, it is possible to stay jammed in like the bottom left corner away from his hand, because if you do touch his hand, it'll constantly do damage to you. Getting hit by an asteroid will cause it to shatter and do damage. Staying in that corner, you can sometimes sort of survive most of the chaos, but asteroids can still spawn on top of you. So in this phase, I do recommend staying to the lower right and just kind of dodging back and forth to avoid the asteroids. Phase 2 ends right around 45 bars of hit points. He'll again walk away into the shadows, and this time he'll reappear coming from the right-hand side of the screen. His attacks in Phase 3 are almost identical to the attacks in Phase 2, with one exception. Instead of using his left hand, now when he leans back, he's going to use his right hand. And instead of pushing the meteors out, he's going to be sucking them into his hand. This also pulls you in as well and can get you pulled into the center of his hand, which will constantly do damage to your character as well. What I usually advise in this case is instead of dodging and constantly running away from the pull that he's doing with his energy into the palm of his hand, is to stay down in the bottom right corner and hide as the asteroids are getting sucked up towards his hand. Much easier to stay safe in this area away from his thumb. And this way, if there are asteroids coming towards you, you can dodge them a little bit easier. But since they're getting sucked in towards his hand, they'll typically stay out of that one corner. So that's usually the best bet in order to survive this. But of course, you can play it how you want and dodge the asteroids if you prefer. Phase 3 ends somewhere around 33, maybe 35, somewhere in that ballpark, around 33 hit bars left. He's going to disappear again. This time, he'll reappear in the center of the screen for the 4th phase. When he first reappears, he's not going to do anything for a little bit, so wail on him and go nuts. He's going to kind of charge up his cosmic energy, crosses his arms, lifts him over his head, explodes in flame, and actually sets himself on blue cosmic fire. This is just his way of showing you that he means business and he's entering his 4th phase, and to give you a little bit of time to just wail on him, try to take him out before he finishes and starts attacking. One of his Phase 4 attacks is one of those that you have to collaborate with your teammates, and this is one of the things that drives me nuts. When I used to play this back in the day, now I stick with Dormammu, but people don't collaborate. What he's going to end up doing is he's going to end up causing this little vortex of cosmic energy, and he's going to be sucking in these little orbs of healing, and they're going to come in from 3 directions, left, right, and center. These little orbs, if they hit him, they will heal little chunks of his life, making it more difficult for you to kill him. Here's the thing, you can get healed with them instead by picking them up. So if you are with other people, typically what you want to do is not just run away from the gravitational pull so you get sucked in the center and die. Instead, you want to go to the left, right, and center. So if you see your allies going to one of those 3 spots, go to one of the other ones. And as those blue orbs come by, pick up every orb. First of all, it's going to heal you, but most importantly, it's going to keep him from being healed so you can get him killed quicker instead of letting himself heal back up. So this is just one of those things with frustration. I've seen a lot of players, they run to a corner and ignore all the orbs, allow him to get healed back up, and then it becomes more difficult to defeat him. pick up the orbs. Work with your teammates. And if one of them is gone or you're by yourself, you will have to run around or he is going to get healed. Now, one of the things that happens towards the end of this healing phase is one of my favorite characters, in case it's not clear, Doctor Strange, is going to come in and cast a spell on one of the team members. Whoever is going to be shining with this yellow golden light from his spell can then take that, run at Galactus and attack Galactus and actually stun him for a while, so then you can beat on him. So if you get the yellow glow, go after Galactus and beat the crap out of him. Sorry I didn't have an animation for that. I probably should have grabbed that. I tried to grab a lot of animations. I forgot to grab that one. Now, let's talk about his phase 4 attacks. One of his attacks now is like the original, where he'll target with a right or left hand, but it's going to cause splash damage in basically like this little strips of red in multiple directions. Just avoid the red. Red is bad, and you'll survive getting attacked by this. In this next attack, he's going to lean back for a second, and he's either going to start on the right or he's going to start on the left, and he's going to go to the opposite side. So he's going to sweep the entire field by shooting 2 blue cosmic rays out of his eyes, and he's pretty much going to hit the entire field besides that little bubble of safety. And again, he's going to sweep from left to right or from right to left. It's going to be random. So there's a couple ways to survive this. The most obvious one is to just go inside the bubble, and the bubble is going to protect you and everyone inside the bubble. The other option is you can actually stay on the far side from where he starts, and as the beams are coming towards you, you can quickly switch to a different character and run through. For a few seconds, as you switch characters, you'll have some invincibility while that character is sort of loading in as you phase out and phase into the new character on your team, and you can run through those beams for a few seconds. Usually most people will just stay inside the bubble unless they had to switch off their main damage dealer and then go back. The next attack he's going to end up doing is he kind of leans back and then he hunches down and he starts creating these balls of cosmic energy, and they're enormous. They're big enough for your characters to fit inside, and they're going to continue to go after one of the characters in one direction. Now, obviously, you can dodge these, but what typically I like to do is to hug the bottom right or bottom left corner. These big orbs of cosmic energy are not going to be able to hit you, but if they do hit you, they're going to take you out pretty quick. He will fire them off in different directions. They always start in the center, and then they kind of rip across the ground and explode and pop as they hit the surface. But again, the bottom left and the bottom right is safe areas where you will not take damage from these explosions. This attack is also a lean back and lean forward, but instead of targeting you with little circles of purple light, instead they're going to appear in multiple locations, and these eruptions of cosmic power are going to fire off on multiple locations at the same time. There are those little indication circles of where he's hitting. Just avoid those and you'll be fine. His other attacks have already been pretty much explained in their phases, so just kind of avoid the attacks, wail on him until he's down, and congratulations, you're able to defeat Galactus. Last but not least, we're going to go ahead and go with the starter GBR character, and that is Master Mold. Master Mold is a pretty easy GBR, but if you're brand new, it's going to be your most difficult because it's going to be the first one you're going to be doing until you can get up to Galactus and then eventually Dormammu. There is a trend with GBRs. Master Mold also has 4 phases as well. Master Mold kind of has an interesting start. He actually has a little alley that you start out at away from him, so you're going to be on this little side alley in the bottom right, and then you have to run to the main alley and then run down the center in order to face him. It's just kind of a cool little intro thing. I wish they had some things like that in the other GBRs as well, but it is what it is. Doesn't add anything. It's just you have more space to run away from and move from, which is kind of interesting. Master Mold's phase 1 is controlled actually by his little minions. So he's going to pop down 3 sentinels in the center of the screen, which you're going to have to deal with. Once you defeat that first set of 3, he throws down a second. You defeat them, then a third. After you defeat the 3 sets of 3, he's going to throw down a singular sentinel, which is larger than the rest. After you defeat that sentinel, you then can start beating on him in order to push him into his next phase. Let's talk about some of the attacks that the sentinels do, as well as Master Mold in the background. To begin with, Master Mold has 2 attacks in this phase. The first attack is he's going to do a sweeping attack right in front of him, from left to right, or from right to left. The other thing he's going to do is hold out both of his hands and fire off blaster shots, which is a single projectile from left or right, which is going to be targeted as players. Those you just pretty much move out of the way of. If he is going to swipe at the ground, you'll see the ground turn red. Just stay out of the red. There are two main attacks that the little sentinels do. The first one is a red beam kind of appears on the ground. You just avoid that. And then they're going to fire off their hand blasters at you in rapid succession for a few seconds. The next one, they're going to crouch down, and a little red circle will appear on the ground where they're going to land. Just avoid that. When they do land, that'll turn gold, and it will be like electrified. So if you stand inside of that, you'll take damage. So just avoid where they land and avoid the yellow circles they leave behind. And it's pretty simple. Then you just kind of beat on them until they're defeated. The single sentinel by himself does basically the same thing. He just does a little bit more damage. Once you defeat the last sentinel, he's going to go into phase 2. It's going to say Master Mold is vulnerable. And now you can start hitting him. Right now, he's kind of standing in a little pit. His feet are kind of hidden. That kind of shows you in phase 1 and phase 2 that he's further away from you. So he's going to use a little bit more distant attacks unless you get up too close and he swings at the ground. Something to keep in mind is Master Mold has a unique beam in his left and his right hand. And this is the same for all phases. His right hand has a blue beam that freezes you and locks you in place for a few seconds. His left beam is purple, and it is going to kind of confuse you and cause a little bit of confusion and make you move around kind of funky for a little bit. So whether he's attacking with the right or left, you'll see a color. Just keep that in mind, and he's going to show where he's going to attack before he actually does the attack. When he's about to attack with one of the beams, he will lean back with the hand he's about to attack with. You'll see the light, so his right hand, which is the left side of the screen, his right side is going to have a blue light. The ground turns red for half the screen. So you want to move, obviously, to the right-hand side of the screen, away from the left-hand side. And he's going to fire off that beam in a straight line. Same thing if he pulls back with the other hand, you'll see the purple, and it'll show the right half of the screen for his left hand, and he fires that purple beam on the left-hand side during this phase. He does continue with the ground sweeps and the little bolts of energy. Once you beat him down to about 50 bars or so, roughly, just past 50 bars, he's going to get mad, call you scum, and then he becomes invincible for a few seconds and stands up. Then he's going to take flight and launch off into the air, and then land on the ground with a slam, doing kind of like a hero pose, slam into the ground, punching for the beginning of phase 3. Stay away from him as he takes off. This will cause splash damage, and of course when he lands as well, which will also cause splash damage. In this phase, he's no longer in the pit. He's now standing on the ground next to you. And one of the attacks that he's going to end up doing in this phase is he's going to sweep from left to right or right to left by firing both beams at the same time. You'll see both blue and purple. Whichever one hits you, of course, will be the effect. Just avoid where it's actually hitting the ground. You can actually run next to him and kind of walk underneath his hands, and the beam will actually miss you, which is kind of a nice tactic for avoiding this. He does continue to do sweeps at the ground with his hand in this phase. But now he's also going to do a stomp, which does a little shockwave. And you can get hit during this phase and be silenced, locking out all your skills for a few seconds until you can go back to attacking. One of his special attacks in this phase is he'll lean back and kind of throw almost an orb of energy, which is like a freezing orb. When it hits the ground, it causes a little splash of freeze. If it hits you, it freezes you and locks you in place. Just avoid where that lands. He's then going to follow up this little freeze with what people jokingly call push-ups. He's going to lean forward and kind of pulsate on the ground like he's doing push-ups, and it's going to cause 3 purple rings to appear that are going to fire off energy up into the sky. He will usually follow this up with 2 slow punches. He punches the ground once, punches the ground twice, and then does a double hit combo, boom, boom. Then he goes back to his other attacks. One of the attacks is also where he takes off again and then lands with his superhero landing punch to the ground. Just avoid takeoff and landing because of the shockwave. Phase 3 will last until about 15 hit point bars, into which case we'll start to enter phase 4. The very beginning of this phase, what's going to end up happening is Master Mold is going to do self-repair mode. He's going to lean forward, his bar is going to turn green, and you have a certain amount of time to beat the snot out of him and get rid of that green bar, which stops him from healing. If you wait too long, he stands back up and regains a certain amount of hit points. In either case, he's going to go from phase 3 to phase 4 by taking off and doing another superhero landing where he smacks into the ground with his fist. Now, if you allowed him to heal, he'll also summon 2 sentinels on the far left and far right, and then you'll have to deal with them during this phase. Every time you defeat them, they'll come back. Or he'll start out with no sentinels, which is what you prefer, also no healing. So try to beat down that green shield over his hit point bar so you can keep him from healing and getting his sentinel help. He will continue with his double beam attack from left to right or right to left. He also continues with his single sweep as well as ground stomp. But what he does a little bit differently this time is instead of throwing one ice ball, he'll now throw 2 ice balls. And when he's doing his little push-up thing, instead of being 3 little energy bursts and explosion, it's actually going to be somewhere, I think, around 10 bursts and explosions now. Again, just kind of avoid them. He does target where they're going, so you just try to look out for them and avoid getting hit. The other thing in Phase 4, that after he does his 1-2 on the ground, he's going to follow this up with 2 1-2 combos. So you'll do a slow punch, punch, and then 1-2, pause, 1-2. And that's it for Master Mold. If you follow all of these tips, you can get through Phase 4 and defeat Master Mold. Hopefully that was helpful. That is it. I'm sure this was a super long video, but I hope it was an informative one. And hopefully you can use the links down below to jump around into which GBR you're most interested in. Please let me know in the comments below. Is this too long of a video? Would you have preferred to have a video per GBR and then just have a generalized one talking about teams and builds? Let me know what your thoughts are below in the comments, and I'll keep that in mind for future videos. Maybe I'll revisit World Boss Legendary. As always, have fun, happy Marvel Future Fighting, and I'll catch you in the next one.